This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a blustery sunset safari here on the western fringes of the Great Kruger National Park. We're at Juma Private Game Reserve. Those are some impala standing beneath a leafless Greenbreecham tree and an even bigger marula tree. Here, where the temperature in the midwinter is a very chilly 83 degrees Fahrenheit or so, 29-ish, or 28 between 28 and 29 Celsius. It's a really magnificent day, but for the slightly strong wind. But we won't complain too much about that. My name is James Henry. Fergus Clark is on camera, and he will be piloting the drone a little bit later on. Thelma, say hello. There's Thelma. We might be doing some thermal droning. Very good. But of course, as always, you are the most important part of what we do, so please talk to us using the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. Otherwise, the chat stream on YouTube is just as effective to get hold of us. Send us your questions, your comments, your insults, and your jokes. Now, the other thing I have to tell you today of most importance is that Stefan Winterboer, the other bald member of the guiding team, he has not guided for a long time, but he is in Wendy. He is driving about, and he's very excited to say hello to you all. It will be just the two of us, believe it or not. Very intimate drives until the afternoon of the 5th. I'm just being indicated towards a hornbill on the ground. This was the bird we had hoped to start our drive with. And I'm not going to spend too much time with the red-billed hornbill because I've been instructed by the director today, who is Luke, I think probably on his final directing shift, sniff sniff, to send you over to Baldylocks number 2.
I can only imagine it's Goldilocks because we both share the same amount of grey hairs in our chest hair, I think, as James and I. Definitely not on our heads. Hello, everybody. My name's Steph Winterboer, and I am going to be joining you with James over the next couple of days. It's just the two of us at Juma, and I am really, really looking forward to exploring the bush with you from a vehicle, which is a rare occurrence for me, in actual fact. Normally, I'm walking around and enjoying that. But every now and again, it is nice to get into a car, and I must say that I'm feeling quite positive and quite energized about being in here. As James mentioned, I am with Seb today on the drive, and he was going through the weather predictions here for the next couple of days. I only predict the wind is going to pick up. The reason for that is that South Africa's just had its first snow for the winter, and for our dry season, the snow has fallen onto the mountains that ring the Central Plateau. They're called the Drakensberg Mountains, and you would have noticed Taylor and Tristan and James and everyone speaking about them from time to time. We can see them in the distance from Juma, and if we're very, very lucky, we might see some snow tomorrow morning when we wake up from here. It's only happened once in all the years that I've been working in the Sabi Sands, where we could see snow on top of the Drakensberg from here. But I was sent photographs from the Western Cape this morning of friends of mine whose kids had built snowmen, so enough snow to fall low enough down on the slopes for children to have snowmen. Now, James, you say what a treat having me in a car. Thank you very much. It is actually quite nice to be in a car, James. I must be honest with you. It's like I said, it's nice. It's different to being on foot, and it's different because your focus is on different things. Being on foot, you try and avoid the big things unless it's safe to view them. Out here, you actively seek them. So it's going to be interesting to see what the next couple of days holds in store for us to find out here. It's going to take me a few hours to get my bush eyes set into the Foster pace, even though I am only driving at 0 kilometers per hour because this speedometer is broken. But anyway, you're going to go and see what James is up to, and we're going to take a turn out towards Sydney's dam for you.
We are going to go towards Beefleshoek Dam and see if we can find where Tingana was earlier today when he scavenged a kill from some wild dogs that left the remains of an impala on the northern side of the water and back north. We'll see what we can find there. Tlalamba was also around there earlier today, so we might find her as well. And we'll find whatever else we can on the way there. You are welcome to send through your requests. I will studiously ignore them all, and no, I won't. I'll do my best to acquiesce to them to the best of my ability, but I am going to start with Tingana. Hopefully he's still there to give us a good solid start to the next 3 hours or so. It really is difficult to believe that this is midwinter. In fact, as I say that, I realize that I've left my jersey behind. And what?
Overcated.
You've overcated, okay, good. We'll have to borrow one of Fergus's. Otherwise I shall become beastly cold later on. Well, I suppose I could nip home and get one. As I left my room, I said to myself, you know, I think the one thing you don't have with you is a jersey. You must go back and get one. And then I didn't do that. Oh well, c'est la vie. As I always say, this time of the day, when the light is quite harsh, it's really can be quite difficult to appreciate the beauty of this place, but in just about an hour the light will soften substantially and suddenly these winter colors pop into all of their glory. A lot of you saying you haven't had Steph and I on drive together for a long time. Steph and I did a drive together other than for TV shows. I think we're losing a bit of signal. Let's go back to... Couldn't be.
It's like James and I are going to be signal hunting a lot today because the signal comes and goes. As you know, bringing you a live moving show from these vehicles in the remote location that we do have it from, it has its challenges from time to time. Now, the reason why I'm going towards Sydney's Dam and I'm on this road that we're on at the moment is because it's hot and it's dry. Now, although we are expecting it to change dramatically, you're going to see a snowman on this vehicle tomorrow morning if this cold front actually does hit us like it's planned to do. The days are very dry, and animals will start to prioritize staying hydrated over staying nourished as this dry season and as this winter progresses. And so what we'll start to see is animals not moving too far from watering points and pans and bodies that hold a little bit of water as we start to go towards the rest of the year. And you know, I was explaining to a friend today how I cannot believe that it's July already. It really is astounding if I start to think back at what all has gone this year and how much we've done. And then we've got another 6 months left, and you know, before we even blink, then we're going to have Christmas back on us again. It's just really tough to imagine. You know, we got the coldest day of the year so far, fast approaching tomorrow, and I'm already starting to think about Christmas. But what I actually wanted to show you was there in front of the car, right there, competing for shining with my bald head, are the tracks of a herd of elephant that have crossed the road during the day. And that is exactly the type of sign that we're looking for to show you this afternoon. So I just want to get a little bit closer to them to figure out exactly if they're going left or right. From this particular angle, it's quite difficult to say with any certainty, at least for my skill level. So I just want to get a bit closer. And now you can clearly see, let's see if you can get this one here. That's there. That's the front edge of the track. That's as the elephant stepped and its foot jutted into the sand and pushed up that little ridge there. So the elephants were going into this direction, which is north and away from where we can drive, unfortunately. And as you can see from the tracks that are over it, that it didn't happen right now. Those tracks are lying on top of the elephant tracks and are therefore placed there after the elephant moved through here. And so no luck for us right now. But we keep on searching. That is what we do. Now, as we go on, we are now going to get into an area where the signal is going to disappear a little bit as we get closer to Sydney's dam. And so you're off to James.
I'll be astounded if our signal survives up through this. The jigger has been pretty good late, so maybe we'll be lucky. If it does dip a little bit, don't worry, by the time we get to the top it'll be fine. Let's just keep going up here. If you've still got us, then we're okay. Still got us? Well done, jigger. Foul old bat. Okay, we're on the final approach to Beefles Hook waterhole, so it'd be good for all of us to look out left and right to see if we can find any sign of Kalamba, who could easily have walked this far from where they saw her this morning. Rex had her on foot. She moved away from his vehicle. She doesn't like being on her own and viewed. I think we've learnt that much. Maybe she's not quite as confident because she doesn't have a sibling. But as I was saying earlier today, it's very clear that some leopards are just more confident than others, in the same way that some human beings are more confident than others. Some are shyer than others. I was quite shy. Fergus, were you quite shy? Fergus is still quite shy. So we all have different personalities, and leopards are exactly the same. They're not all, and I imagine impalas are probably also the same. Now we are obviously in the height of the dry season. Say giraffe. Okay, we probably will see giraffe more often in the dry season. Why would we say that? Oh, you've just seen one. Fantastic. Okay, so there's a giraffe up ahead. Sinak, really, we wouldn't really expect to see any animals more frequently during the dry season in this particular area, because nothing migrates because of this artificial water provision of the Sabi Sand. So they've got dams like this, which means everything is resident all year round. Hello. How are you? Nice to see you. Yes. Very nice meal you're having. Spinach. I feel like the car is slowly drifting backwards. Yep, it is. Let me put it in low range. There we go. That should do the trick. There we go. No, Ferg wasn't doing a flow zoom out. We were just slipping backwards. But thank you for that, Lucas. So a gorgeous giraffe. I think this is the same chap we saw yesterday. No, it's not. He's got symmetrical horns. Yes, my safari is quite dark. I wouldn't say he's very dark, but he's darkish. Which, it's not unusual. The males do tend to get slightly darker as they get older. And he's definitely not a youngster anymore. So I suspect that he's just getting on. He's probably about 14 years or so. Apparently they can live up to about 20. I've never asked a giraffe its age before. More certainly I've never had an answer to asking it what its age was before. Look at that tongue moving. Another silent afternoon, just a bit of wind, and in the distance a black-headed oriole going chew, chew, chew. Yeah, it was a loud rendition of his call because he is far away and he's behind us. But other than that, everything looks very, very calm indeed here at Beefles Hook. going to look up ahead and see if I can see anything further. Like Tingana lurking in a tree. I don't think we'll be able to see him from here. But let's pop up there and see what we can find. He's in that direction. Bye-bye, Mr. Giraffe. Until next time, we'll be going to see a leopard up over there.
I like the way that was that a challenge from James, or I'm not quite sure exactly what that was, but it's all good. James is looking for Talamba, and obviously being as confident as what he is, you know, it's always a good thing to have a bit of friendly competition. Now, we went past Sydney's dam. There was nothing there. A few impala, a few male impala, in fact, 2 or 3. And so now what we're going to do is sort of head out towards Treehouse Dam, approaching it from the western side, because there's a lot of good vegetation in the seep lines above Treehouse Dam. We're going to see if we can catch something, just having a sort of mid-afternoon snack before heading off to the water. So that's what we're going to do. And while we're at it, scanning these thickets for any sign of life. Now, I'm still feeling that it's a pretty hot day, even though the air temperature, the wind that's blowing in is feeling a bit colder. The sun is actually still quite intense. And that lying down out of the wind will actually be quite hot. And so things like predators, cheetah, wild dog, lion, leopard, there's every chance that we get to see them lying out in the shady spots that you can see. So these guarri bushes provide a fantastic amount of shade, and just by scanning them, quite often you can catch something trying to stay hidden. Now, of course, lots of prey animals like impala and steenbok also hide underneath these bushes. Now, Billy, who's only 6 years old, has asked me what my favorite leopard is. Billy, any one of the leopard is my favorite, to be honest. But if I had to choose one, it would probably be... I quite like Tingana, mainly just because he's nice and big and he doesn't really care much about anything. These are all some young impalas, Billy. Something that Tingana would like to snack on, one of these leopards snack on. Now, they are slightly out, generally speaking, of what leopard would normally consider food, but in this particular area, impala are so common that that leopard get quite good at hunting them. These are youngsters, young males, and they're all still hanging around with each other because only about 5 or 6 weeks ago was the rut. And the male impala still have a lot of their male hormone in their body called testosterone. And the testosterone is a hormone that creates a little bit of aggression in the older males, and these young males band together and basically keep out of the way of these older males. And they form bachelor herds with one another. And these bachelor herds are basically just to keep one another safe. More eyes and ears looking out for things that want to snack on you, the better chance you have of staying unnoticed. Let's go around the corner and see if we can see a nice dynamic of these bachelor herds and see if it's still intact. The young males are quite often joined by males that are too old to participate for females. And quite often you get this nice structure where the young rams that learn how to fight and wrestle from the older guys, they all have this particular affliction of an increase in testosterone, but only the prime rams get to really bash it out for the females. And so even these youngsters and the old guys still have that aggressive response. They still wrestle with one another. And now I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here. So we've just seen some young males, and they are now hanging out on the periphery of this herd of impala that you can see just in the front of us now. There you go. I know that there's females here because some of them haven't got horns, if any of you are wondering why I'm saying male and female. So the ones without the horns are the females. The ones with the horns even if it's a small horn like that one there, Zamana. Now that guy, what he's doing there, he's roaring a challenge at these young guys. That roaring response only really happens when they're full of testosterone. You can see that his 4 quarters, so from the back of the front legs all the way through to the neck, is still relatively swollen. Look at him go. And that is just because his body was responding to the increase in testosterone. They'll start to deflate a little bit as their testosterone levels decrease. And it is cyclical. I quite enjoy these things. All right. Now, from one thing roaring to another. Off you go.
Here we are with this other thing that isn't roaring at the moment, nor is he sawing. He's sleeping. Tingana, just below his tree. He's stashed a little bit, well, he's got a little bit left, I suppose, of his impala kill. You'll just see a bit of brown sort of in that fork there. I don't think he's going to be going very far today. So I think we'll sit with him for sort of 2 segments or so and then go off and see what else we can find and maybe pop back here as it gets a bit cooler. Oh, he's put his head up. Huge action here. Oh, can he see you or smell? Is it maybe another leopard? Is it a hyena? Is it nothing at all? Nothing, no. He's a very contented fellow now. Got a meal for free this morning. Still a bit left. Nice fat stomach. It's not the worst Monday afternoon he's ever had. Sharon, no one really knows the answer to this question because nobody's actually ever measured them. Now, you will hear people in this area saying that the Anderson male is, at least 90 kilograms. He's the biggest leopard that history's ever known. He's the most massive cat in the whole world. He's so big and intimidating and much stronger than anything else in creation. Well, you know, because people, I'm obviously exaggerating slightly, because people do exaggerate about the size of these animals, and they don't really know. That said, I am reliably told that he is bigger than most leopards that we have in this area, and the average male leopard size for this Kruger National Park, based on a sample of probably about 10 or 12, I think they've done it, is about 64 kilograms or so. Now 64 kilograms is about 130 pounds odd, so I don't think that the Anderson male is anywhere near 90 kilograms. I think you'll probably find that Tingana is about an average size male, maybe slightly bigger than average, but I wouldn't say so. So let's put him at 65 kilograms odd to be generous. And then let's say that the Anderson male might be slightly larger, maybe 70, 72 kilos or so. So really not a huge amount of difference. 72 kilograms weighs in at round about, call it 150 to 160 pounds. So he might be bigger. He certainly, I mean, he looks stockier and about the same height. I would have said that Tingana and Hukumuri weigh the same, roughly, although Hukumuri is definitely slightly shorter, I think, than Tingana, but he's more heavily built. And Anderson is like a sort of Hukumuri, but the same height as Tingana. Now this is all based on photographs and things that I've seen, because I've never actually seen the Anderson male in the flesh. But if he was 90 kilograms, he'd be pretty much the size of a lioness. And I don't think he's that big. I'm not sure entirely that I can answer that question, Romit. How fast would he digest a pound of meat? in theory, he could eat about a third of his body weight in one sitting, or certainly in almost one sitting. So that's 20 kilograms of meat odd. I think that's quite a lot, really. That's about, how many pounds? It's about 50 pounds of meat. And he digests all of that completely in probably about 5 or 6 hours. So very fast digestion they have. But how long exactly it would take for him to digest 1 pound of meat, I'm really not sure, Romit. Sometimes very difficult to answer these things because nobody's ever actually researched them. And as I quite often say, it's sometimes quite difficult to give accurate answers to, for example, how much does that animal weigh? Because unless you are quite careful about the source you use, it really can be quite difficult. So the reason I say this, and I've shown you some of this before, but I'm going to do it again. You'll hear people say, well, the Anderson male weighs 90 kilograms. Well, I mean, nobody's ever weighed him. I don't think anyone will weigh him, certainly not in his prime, unless he's killed by something. And so you go to a textbook like this Smithers Guide to African Mammals that I've got, which is basically a summary of just about every paper you care to think of to do with the animals in question, to do with every mammal in the southern African sub-region. And when you look at it, you see, for example, that the sample size of leopards in the Sabi Sands that was sampled in 1993, no less, is about 27 odd. So 27 animals were measured. That's all. So really not a lot at all. In fact, only 6 in the Kruger National Park. Only 6. All right, we're going to sit here for one more segment. In the meantime, let's go across to Stefan, who has got a flappy thing.
One of my absolute favorites is these little golden-breasted buntings. I'm very, very happy to show it to you today. They normally don't sit still at all. And we've got this one sitting dead still just for us. So screen grab it, archive it in your bird lists. The golden-breasted bunting with its zebra-striped helmet and its beautiful chest, which in some lights is actually quite golden. And there you can see that this, as soon as the wind blows its feathers up, it's actually got a black skin. I've never seen that before. How cool. But we're just taking it easy. It's nice to know that you've got Tingana on with James at Buffelshoek Dam, and that he ended up spending the whole day lying out here. It's quite nice. He can walk incredible distances during the day, and on a day like today, which has got the wind cooling you down, it seems like we're actually quite lucky to have him lying around still, and that's quite nice. So while we have him, we're absolutely going to enjoy him, because who knows where he's going to go after this and after how long it's going to take before he decides to come back again. Male leopards obviously have territories that they defend, and they defend it from other males, and inside these territories are female territories. And so by a male defending the largest territory that he can, he has access to the most females that he possibly can have, and that obviously secures his genetic code into the leopard of this area. And so it's important for Tingana to make sure that he constantly pushes these boundaries out as far as he is able to. But of course, every other male leopard in this area is doing the same thing. And they will push in from the north and push in from the east. And so if he doesn't patrol enough inside his area, which in a way is actually a way to show the females in that particular area that he's fit and strong. Male that holds the largest territory for the longest time has to be the biggest, strongest, fittest, most active, most cunning male that there is. And of course, they also need to make sure that only the strongest males get to mate with them. And in that way, leopard genes are just sort of strengthened throughout the eons. Now, Costa, you'd like to know what is the size difference between the males in the different territories? If I got that right, Luke, just to reaffirm that Costa's question was just about male sizes. So male territories versus female territories, Costa, excuse me, I'm just getting used to speaking and hearing voices in my head at the same time again. On average, Costa, and we're working in hectares here, male leopard territories are about 5,000 hectares and female leopard territories are 2,500 hectares. But that shrinks the closer you get to a river and the denser the bush gets, and widens the more open the plains are. So plains are dominated by lions and hyena, which outcompete leopard. Riverine bush, leopard it's their favorite hunting places, and so more leopard can fit into a smaller space. But on average through the Kruger National Park, it's about 5,000 hectares for a male and 2,500 hectares for a female. To put that into context for you, lion pride territories, so pride territories are around about 5,000 hectares per pride in the Kruger National Park. So fairly large for leopard, to be honest with you. And it'll shrink, and their edges are like amoeba-like. They will change direction depending on what leopard puts pressure where. But James is the one sitting with the leopard, so why doesn't he carry on the story?
Now we have our fellow, we've moved slightly around the corner. That's not him, don't worry, that's his meal. That's sitting there in the tree. And you can see what's left of it. That's quite a nice view there of the fetlock gland, which is used to disperse pheromones when they're running away from predators. So they can find each other in the bushes. This is the impala I'm talking about. That was an impala. His stomach is still sitting down by the waterside. And really, that is a perfect dining room for Tingana. We have moved to the side of, so we can have a look at his golden head. But like I say, I think that we'll just do one more segment here, and then we'll probably press on and see what else we can see. I'm just going to let everybody know what's going on the radio. No, I don't need to. It's all been done. All right. Are you all happy for us to do that? We'll sit here for the next 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll move on and come back a bit later, because I think I will run out of things to say about this sleeping cat. You can let us know, of course, on the hashtag SafariLive. He's got a remarkably unscarred face, I think, for a nigh on 13-year-old leopard. And apparently all of you are not asking any questions about this leopard, but talking about how handsome Steph is. Now look, that's all very well, but let's keep it focused. Let's keep it focused on the real handsome man, and I'm certainly not referring to myself. I'm referring, of course, to Tingana and Fergus. I say it's fun having Steph on drive. Again, many of you will be pleased to know also that Baron is coming on the 5th. He's going to drive for us for a few days. In the lead up to the TV shows, we need as much help as we can get, so Baron is coming to help us out. That's Byron, for those of you who don't know. And so that is who will be driving then. So lots to look forward to. Tingana, you can see, is deeply excited by this. Rob, a nice subject to talk about is what other animals smell of cats like leopards. There's no question that they smell their scent marking, absolutely. I mean, if our insensitive noses are able to pick up the smell, there's no reason on earth that animals with much more sensitive noses than our own aren't able to pick up the scent of animals. But that said, I think, and I've said this before to many of you, I'm pretty sure that these cats are as fastidious as they are about cleaning themselves, precisely because they do not want to be smelt. And I don't think it's a coincidence that pack animals like hyenas, wild dogs, and lions are much less fastidious about cleaning themselves. Yes, they do clean themselves from time to time, but they don't spend nearly as much time on the cleaning, and they don't do it immediately. So lions will clean each other after 3 days of being covered in the innards of a buffalo, and wild dogs might lick each other, a couple of hours after they've been buried in the bowels of an impala like this. Likewise, hyenas, I don't think they ever clean themselves. I think they just stink. Hyenas absolutely hum. But leopards, you do not notice a smell when they walk past you. Now, of course, like I say, we don't have sensitive noses. But I really think that they are so fastidious about cleaning themselves in order to avoid being smelt by their predators. It's a very interesting subject, that, because people will also tell you that these animals will try and hunt into the wind so as to avoid being smelt. Now, the literature does not bear that out. There's a lot of research done on that, and it simply does not bear out the fact that these animals pay any huge attention to the wind when they're hunting. And I think it's a much better idea for them rather just to stay clean. Okay, there are other people who are going to come into the sighting, so I think what we're going to do is move away. We will definitely come back here as the sun begins to sink, and in the meantime, Stefan, I believe, has managed to find himself a wildebeest.
That is the amazing thing of being out here, is you can leave a leopard sighting and you can say with some confidence, we'll be back later. I think we forget how special it is, this place that we're in. And I have indeed found some wildebeest. This is about the sum total of the amount of wildebeest we're likely to see in South Africa in any one place. Obviously there are some larger concentrations, but nothing like we find in East Africa, many thousands of kilometers away. And that is because herd size is determined by topography and vegetation. And here, the topography is very undulating. It's not flat and open, and it is interspersed with thickets of vegetation around rivers and around forests, and that all fragments a herd into tiny little groups. And because you're smaller, you are easier prey, and because of that, herd sizes here in the Kruger National Park have never been as big as what they are or can be in East Africa. In East Africa, the herd sizes there are enormous. Here, this is very big to see. In fact, I haven't seen bigger herds of wildebeest anywhere in the Sabi Sand except for here, like this. Up near Satara in the central Kruger National Park, where you do find a little bit more plains of grass, you find about the same number hanging around together, and you may find more groups this size in a closer proximity to one another, but this is pretty much as big as what you get. Now, these are big. These are, generally speaking, outside of the prey size that leopard would generally take, but a big guy like Tingana would absolutely try an injured or old wildebeest, and definitely young wildebeest are on his menu. And he will try his best to try and take one if he could. Leopard probably being the most opportunistic hunters. And there I will agree with James totally, where I haven't really noticed that the big cats, including leopard, hunt with any specific frequency into the wind, or keeping their noses into the wind. I seem to think that it's got a lot more to do with available cover and the general direction that animal is moving in, rather than wind direction, to be honest. I must say I'll agree with James, but it's literally just based on my experiential knowledge and observations. There could well be a scientific report out there that suggests otherwise. Now, Brent, you'd like to know why they're referred to as the blue wildebeest. I don't actually know, to be honest. I know that their other common name is the brindled gnu, and that comes from those stripes that you see on their coat. That you'll see when we go in a little bit closer, you'll notice some stripes just behind their front leg. That brindled pattern there is where they get their name brindled gnu from. And the gnu is from the noise they make. They make a sound very similar to that. But James has got a bird, and so before it flies away, off you go.
We have a bird, as you can see. That is the... We know it's a bird, of course, because it's sitting in a tree. It has feathers. It didn't climb up there. It most likely flew up there. And so, therefore, it's most likely a bird. That's how we know. It's also got a beak. I haven't seen it lay an egg, but I'm pretty sure it's a bird. This bird is a juvenile battalier. Now, how, you might say, in the name of sliced bread, have you figured that one out? Well, I say to you, it's a bit of experience. You know what they look like after a while. But the key thing here, if you happen to find yourself birding in an area where battaliers live, and you are not particularly au fait with young ones, basically it's got an almost bald face. You can see that face there, which will eventually race. He's got a big head. He's got featherless legs. And he's a chunky bird. He's a chunky eagle, much more so than, say, a brown snake eagle, which you might confuse him for. He's just got a sort of chunky, stocky look about him. And it's not surprising to find him here because battaliers are scavengers, and the stomach of the impala that Tingana hung in the tree not too far from here is sitting down by the water's edge, as I mentioned. And I'm pretty sure that this fellow is going to go and have a go at that as soon as we leave. Now I'm just going to be quiet. There's an interesting bird calling. It's not that battalier. There. It's an acacia-pied barbet. I mean, the only reason I mention that is because I'd be quite excited to see the acacia-pied barbet here. But at the moment, I don't think we'll see him. All right, let's pop down here. We can have a look at the stomach. Delicious-looking stomach. Sinak, you seem to be very interested in the different seasons and what we'll see at different times. It's very good. It's logical. But we will not see different birds in the winter time, but we will obviously see a greater number of birds in the summertime, and that's because the migrants will return. All migrant birds are absent at the moment, and so we will see them. Now this is a beautiful starling that has been sitting next to the stomach of this impala for some time. Unfortunately, he's now flown off. Can you see the stomach there? We'll just stop there. There is the large stomach, and you can't believe that it fitted inside of that impala. So, Sinak, I think roughly, what is it? It's probably, I'd say about 50% of our birds migrate. And so, you know, you'll see 50% more birds in the summertime. You'll also hear all of the birds a lot more loudly in the summer. They call much more. So I'm not going to get out and prod about in that because I think that there are birds hoping to come down and have a look. But in the meantime, I believe that Stefan would like to tell you even more. Ooh, hang on, before we do that. Oh, that's the battalier. Let's go back across to Steph and his wildebeests.
It's nice actually to know that we've got a baby battalier on the property. It's always good to see. And isn't it just incredible, the colour difference between what you'd commonly know as a battalier with the black and white markings and this brown drab bird that you see with James. Now we are indeed still with our wildebeest herd. And they are displaying exactly the type of behavior that causes the migration. So if you go a little bit wide from where you are now, you'll notice that they're all standing in a line, and they're all feeding on the palatable grasses. Wildebeest are ruminants, and so they only feed on a very select group of grass. And they're now all making sure that they get to that grass first, and that's why they're standing in a line, but they're not in front of one another or behind one another, because being in front singles you out, and being behind singles you out, but it also makes you hungry. So standing in a line helps you get the food at the same time, and as the food finishes, they move on. Now you can imagine when there's 1.5 million of you, that this happens fairly quickly. And that's exactly what happens in the Serengeti Mara ecosystem, where the wildebeest, the rain dries up, the grass starts to die, and the wildebeest basically just walk following the grass all the way north into the northern part of the migration, hundreds of kilometers away. And then when the rain comes back, they go all the way back again. Now, this isn't a migration. You get seasonal migration in the Kruger National Park. We don't, but it's minor. Now, Phil, you'd like to know if there's a dominant male in this herd of wildebeest. There absolutely is, and he's standing way off on the right-hand side here, looking splendid. I think that's him, at least anyway. He looks to be the biggest. Or am I mistaken? What's those mammary glands on our male? Yes, they are. That's definitely not a male. Oopsie. So let's see if we can. What about the guy all the way on the left-hand side? He also looks pretty big. Now, Robin, you asking a question which I've been asking myself for the last couple of seconds. What is the main difference between bulls and cows or the wildebeest? From a distance, not much, to be honest with you. So the biggest thing that I look for is one of two things: a penis sheath on the belly, or a scrotum behind the tail between the back legs. Or in the case of females, you'll actually see mammary glands sticking out just forward of the back legs, and that is what I saw with this female that we had on the far right. You'll notice in profile she misses the distinctive little skin tassel about a foot in front of the back legs, and if you look carefully there, you'll just see the tips of the mammary glands sticking out. Not that I can really see. There we go. You can just see the tips sticking out there. And if we go back to our male on the left-hand side, you'll notice that he has that very distinctive little tassel and an angled protrusion coming off his belly. And right now you can't see between his back legs, but that in profile is absolutely distinctive. So that is the male, and he's big enough to be the bull as well. All right, and you're going to have a look. James has managed to find the most entertaining hippo in the whole of Djuma.
Yes, blow me down if the most boring hippopotamus in all the world has managed to find himself a lady. Look at that, hey? There's a lid for every pot, as they say. And Scuba seems to have found his lid. When people used to say that to me, I used to say, yes, but some pots are not pots at all, they're pans. Which I thought was immensely clever of me.
You get lids for pans?
Hmm?
You get lids for pans?
Do you get lids for pans?
Okay.
Oh, I see. Oh, good. Well, Luke's just written it down because he thinks it's extremely witty. He is, of course, being extremely sarcastic at the same time. So, the Scuba Steve, who, if you are a new viewer, is the hippopotamus that lives here at Buffelshoek Dam, was absent this morning. And he was absent this morning presumably because he was out late on a date. and he managed to convince the lady with him to come home with him, which I think is quite astounding. I can only think that she drank way too much last night and has now woken up in the afternoon thinking, oh my goodness, how do I get away without being rude? And you can see, just by the... Scuba is a big fellow. I mean, if you look at the size of his head, he's much, much bigger than she is. That said, maybe she's decided this is the one. And many of you are celebrating that. Yeah, definitely a great, very awkward silence now. Blunt each other.
Alright, so you're back with us. James lost a little bit of signal, and as you know, that happens from time to time. He'll find it again shortly, don't worry, and you'll go back to him. In the meantime, we've left those wildebeest, and we are continuing our journey out to Treehouse Dam to see what we can find en route. Now, as we quite rightly predicted, in these areas where grass is still plentiful and the grass is of a good enough quality, we found some animals. We found the wildebeest and we found the impala a little bit earlier, and I'm hoping that we get to see some zebra or some elephant or perhaps even some buffalo over the course of the next few minutes. I did see some buffalo dung a little bit earlier, and I don't know if there have been buffalo on Djuma over the last couple of days, but it would be quite nice if they do start coming through. As James mentioned a little bit earlier, we're most likely going to see more of the animals we've been seeing through summer, and that's because they start to concentrate around the watering holes. And where we went from seeing one buffalo every 2 weeks, we'll start to see one buffalo every week, and hopefully herds of buffalo every couple of days towards the end of the dry season. And of course, buffalo are followed by lion. And hopefully the lions start moving around a bit, at least moving towards water, and of course setting up camp at these watering holes where we can get to see them a little bit more often. Interestingly, I read something a few years ago that impala have territories that shrink by about half in the dry season around water holes, and increase by double obviously in the wet season to include more area to eat in. Just sort of pretty weird statistic. These areas on top of these crests are really good for a grass called Panicum maximum, and I know you've been treated over the last couple of weeks and months to Steve and his encyclopedic knowledge of the bush when it comes down to botany. I'm not even going to try and compete at that particular level with him. He's really is fantastic when it comes down to that. But I do know where you have an overabundance of shade underneath large trees in this area above the terminalia thickets that we get this grass, this Panicum maximum growing, and it turns into a brilliant winter grass. It's got a broad leaf and it dries out quite nicely, and it actually creates what we call a winter fodder. Now, around these termite mounds, I'd like to show you what I'm talking about. It is not the Panicum I'm talking about. This is different grass. But around termite mounds, you have a lot of extra nutrients. And if you have a look on the slopes of this termite mound, you'll see grass there, where my shadow is pointing, with a much broader leaf than if you just go up a little bit and you have a look further away. Sorry, away from the termite mound, Seb. Excuse me. That's me not being clear. So broad, nutritious grass that grow on the flanks of termite mounds where they are growing in very nutritious soils. And the further away you move from the termite mounds, you'll notice how the leaves of the grass virtually disappear. And that is now a completely different species of grass and not as palatable. Now, because more palatable grasses grow on the slopes of these termite mounds, you can see how they are grazed down flat. And you get these grazing circles developing around these termite mounds. And eventually, toward the end of the season, there'll be none of that grass left. It'll just be sand with the unpalatable grasses ringing it in ever-increasing circles away from it until the rain starts again. Isn't that cool? Gary, you'd like to know if they're fire-resistant grasses or trees. Gary, I'd like to say that everything here, to a degree, is fire-resistant. Now, a really hot fire, a fire that is burning here because of a set of unusual circumstances, a fire burning into the wind on a massive amount of combustible material, will kill grass and will kill trees. But those types of fires are uncommon. By far and wide, the most common fires that we have here are fires that sweep through the bush at the speed of the wind, with the wind. And it's basically like taking a broom and sweeping out the dust in a house. It just cleans out all the combustible material and leaves the trees and the grass virtually untouched. By the time fires start to become a risk here, generally speaking, the bush has had months of the seeds of those grasses being churned into the soil just by the action of grass and plants growing and by insects and such, churning up the soil and burying the seeds of the grass. And those frost fires sweep through here so quick that even leaves that are at the top of even relatively small shrubs don't really discolor or even turn up. So I would say that almost everything here, to a degree, is fire resistant, and the fact is that fire has been part of this environment for forever, basically. We've got a colony of dwarf mongoose here, so I'm just going to reverse a little bit. A troop, not a colony, I should say. Excuse me, I don't know where my English is going. So let's just switch our car off here. And let's see if we can wait just a little bit and see if one of these dwarf mongoose pokes its head out of the grass where you're busy having a look at now. You may have heard a shrill little whistle there if the microphone was sensitive enough for that. That's their alarm call. Now, these little dwarf mongoose hang around in family groups together, an alpha pair, basically mom and dad, that along with their sub-adult and adolescent siblings look after the babies of the troop, and they forage for insects mainly during the day, and let's hope one sticks its head out of here and gives us a view of them. That's probably the most likely place that they'll come out there, Seb, where you are there now. They're very inquisitive, and what I'm hoping is that one of the more inquisitive of them sticks their head out and says hello. Come on, don't be so shy. I didn't give you a big fright. Now, this could be just because this troop doesn't get to see vehicles or people that often. There are spaces on this reserve where animals won't see vehicles or people as often as what others would. And believe it or not, they still retain some of the timidity that cousins in areas that never see people or never see vehicles have. I actually quite like it, to be honest with you. I think it's quite refreshing. Robin, you also like mongoose. Luke tells me that you've just commented that they are the cutest. I also think so. I think the way that they look at a person and sort of, they've got an inquisitive nature about them, that's for sure, and that to me is intriguing. Now come now, don't be like this. Hold thumbs, everybody, that one at least sticks its head out. Although, as luck would head it. There's one on the tree. Let's go forward and see. Come on, come on. Why I'm saying that that's the best place. Ah, there we go, there we go. There you can see him just peeking over the top of the tree trunk.
Oh, yes.
There you go. For those of you seeing dwarf mongoose for the first time, they're fairly common. Mammals that we have on Djuma, with them having territories that they defend against other families, and these territories are relatively small, and so we see them quite often. But it's always nice to see these timid guys sticking their head out and obviously just keeping a beady eye on us. Now they'll be hunted by big birds of prey. That bateleur that you saw with James a little bit earlier on won't think twice about snatching an unwary dwarf mongoose off of the ground. And because of that, they actually put their inquisitive brains to use, not only in all the inventive ways that they can forage, but also in placing sentries. And these sentries will use elevated positions to scan the skies for any raptors, and they have a very specific alarm call which causes the rest of the family to scurry away undercover, and they'll have one for raptors and another one for snakes and another one for leopard, and proper communication with one another. Now, Sinak, you'd like to know if they can attack other animals because they're so small. Now, Sinak, they absolutely can, and what is fairly unique amongst mammal carnivores is that they can hound something together in a group. Now, we quite often reference the large cats here, lions in particular, that hunt very large prey by hunting cooperatively. Now, mongoose are the other mammals, the only other mammal carnivores other than the wolves, other than the canids, jackal and wild dog in Africa at least anyway, who will hunt collectively. And they can bring down, they don't course animals, of course, mongoose, but they will quite often hound snakes, and if given the chance, they will kill snakes much larger than themselves and feast on them. Generally, though, it just seems to be a free-for-all, I must be honest with you. Now, Minamu, you've brought on an interesting topic. Can mongoose survive the bites of venomous snakes? Minamu, yes, they can. They seem to have an immunity to snake venom. No one really knows why or how, not at least as far as I've ever read. But they tend to be a little bit more immune to snake venom. They can take a bite from something like a cobra and not be as affected as anything else. But I can assure you, though, that given a proper bite and enough venom, that a cobra or a puff adder or a black mamba's venom is enough to overpower a mongoose, especially one with such a small body size. And while they do have a degree of immunity, they're not completely immune to the bites of these snakes. And quite often you'll find black mamba coursing after mongoose. They're not shy about chasing them away, mongoose to snakes, but absolutely, a large mamba will make a meal of these mongoose as easy as a large puff adder would. Now, you might be wondering where James has gone. We are having a little bit of difficulty with Jigger at the moment, and so Alex and James are working on it as hard as what they can, and so they will join us in a little bit. And so you'll just have to put up with my droning on for the next couple of minutes. Now, this is actually the first time that I'm driving on this road in a vehicle. I've run this road countless times with James exercising, but I've never driven it before, and so it's actually quite nice. I couldn't understand why Rexon, when he designed this road. All right. So as I came around the corner, Seb, over my shoulder, noticed that the mongoose. There we go. This is where they're going to be denning for the night. Mongoose have or dwarf mongoose at least anyway, have dens that they sleep in. Every single night they den up in termite mounds. And they do that specifically because termite mounds are warm and they have these cavities in them that allow the mongoose to stay warm. And they'll have many of these dens all over the place, all over their territory. And what they'll do is one will go in and check it out for snakes. And once they find a suitable one for the evening, they go in. And the next night they sleep in a different one so that they don't get trapped in there by a snake. Now, Sal, very similar to mongoose, to meerkats, mongoose will defend their territories firstly with non-aggressive means. So they'll do it with posturing at one another, lots of mobbing, mock charging. They'll do it through signals left on grasses and in latrine sites all over the place. So using olfactory using olfactory systems in their bodies like glands to secrete substances which then mark and demarcate territory. And if it really comes down to it, they'll pit their strengths against one another in an all-out battle. But that is relatively rare. I've never seen mongoose fighting with one another in a pitched battle, but I am told that it does happen. But just have a look at how cute that is. I mean, you're really going to battle to find a cuter face out here. A willow, mongoose will have anywhere from about 2 to 6 babies at a time in a litter. And those babies are usually born only to the alpha male and female. So only to mom and dad. As the adolescents become sub-adults and as the males start to compete or will start to compete for mating rights with any adult female, just the normal competition chases them out, and then sub-adults from different troops will meet with one another and hitch up and will form their own troops. Now you may think to yourself, well, is there enough space for mongoose out here to do that if every single adolescent is becoming an alpha pair? To be honest, the attrition rate on these guys is huge. They get killed by lots of things, and so not very many of these mongoose reach adulthood, which is unfortunate, but it does happen. And so there's always a vacant territory somewhere along the line for a new pair to make their home. Sinak, you ask if I've seen them defending their lairs against larger predators like leopard or lion. I haven't. I've only seen dwarf mongoose fall victim to the larger predators. In fact, I watched a male leopard once, many years ago, basically jump from bush to bush where he had managed to isolate mongoose. There's one on the termite mound in front of us there. Where he managed to isolate a troop of mongoose, and he basically jumped from one mongoose to another, killing them off as quickly as he could, and eventually they then ran away and managed to make their escape. It was actually tragic to watch. And then I've seen a few mongoose with eyes that have been damaged by the venom of spitting cobras. And I watched a deranged mongoose, whether it had rabies or whether it was suffering from a neurotoxic bite from a snake. I'm not too sure, but there was this little mongoose just wandering around aimlessly out in the bush the one day. I wasn't going to pick it up. Rabies out here is something that you have to watch out for. And so I just left it to fend for itself, unfortunately. These guys will catch the last little bit of sun and then they'll go underground for the evening. Joy, you ask an interesting question. What is the collective noun or correct name for mongoose babies? Kids, cubs, or I couldn't catch the last one, Luke? Pups. All right, pups. That is a very good question. So what I'm going to do is consult this massive library that I end up bringing out with me on these things. And the reason why is because if I don't, then there's no reason why I do bring this massive box of things out. And so it gives me reason to consult. So what I'm going to do is consult a book called Behavior Guide to African Mammals, and in it is pretty much everything that you need to know about these types of animals. And I must be honest with you, mongoose, $2.95. This is a fantastic book to have. It really explains everything about their about animal behavior. So this is now a slender mongoose. Let's go to dwarf mongoose. White-tailed mongoose, no. Yellow mongoose, no. Dwarf mongoose. There we go, and you can see how much information is on just dwarf mongoose. Incredible, eh? So, fetuses, 63 litters born in 5 of the packs, 42 males, 6 litters. Doesn't say anything about younger sister, pack sometimes. Luke has just waded into this and has said that according to Google, it's pups, which makes sense, I suppose. Pack members. Let's see if we can find something that contradicts that. No. Spend 67 minutes per day with her babies. I mean, that's incredible. Mother suckled her offspring. Weaning at 67 weeks. No mongooses older than 55 days were observed nursing. That's pretty much everything that it says. So much for this book being the be-all and end-all, hey? Okay, so let's see. So let's just take it at that, basically. Now, Roman, you'd like to know what diseases would affect mongooses the most. I would say the disease of being food for other things is what affects them the most. They definitely are small enough to fall victim to any number of predators out here, from the hunting cats at nighttime of any size through to jackal and eagles, monitor lizards to snakes during the day. And so unfortunately for them, they definitely are on the menu for many things. And so rather than the vast majority of them succumbing to a disease, the vast majority of them would succumb to predation. Although, that being said, communal diseases that affect these types of animals really have a devastating effect on the population. And so I would imagine something like rabies could sweep through a mongoose population rapidly and do significant damage to mongoose populations around. Right, let's carry on going. Jigger has been recalled to hospital. Her field repairs were unsuccessful, and so she has now been recalled to have a look at in person. And so we'll get an update. I'll share Jigger's woes with you as we carry on with this afternoon's drive. Oh, you can see this wind that's in front of this cold front that's kicking up. Hasn't started to blow just yet, but you can see the branches starting to move now with an increased tempo. And significantly, everything has got this yellow tinge to it. Now, as the sun goes down today, I predict that we are going to have a fantastic sunset. One massive red ball on a very hazy horizon, and that is because ahead of this cold front it would be scooping up a massive amount of dust. Now, this cold front came from the southern Atlantic and will be sweeping up across the country, pretty much from the Western Cape across the Free State across the Gauteng province, across Mpumalanga, and into Limpopo province where we are now. So 4 or 5 provinces that this cold front is going to be sweeping up across the land, and it'll be pushing ahead of it a massive cloud of dust. And of course that's going to put a lot of dust into the atmosphere and give us a superb sunset. So Sebastian, we must find a nice place to have sunset, I think. Wow, we've got a bird party in front of us. Now, Magic Dragon Wizard, you've just asked an interesting question. Who is Jigger? Jigger is one of our vehicles. We name our vehicles. They become part of our, well, they're not become, we become part of their family is more rightly the right way of putting it. We have Jigger, Wendy, and Rusty out here at Djuma. And they are the game drive vehicles that we drive around in. Jigger, Wendy, and Rusty. Rusty is in her parking garage at the moment, and I'm assuming that if James can't get Jigger working again, that Rusty will be brought into action. I'm on Wendy today, and basically we become part of their family. They stick around and have been around for donkey's years. And we get in them every day. We do roughly 30 kilometers per game drive, so 60 kilometers per day in these vehicles over some of the most demanding terrain that you can imagine. And what we're busy having a look at over there, which Seb has been dutifully following for us, thank you Seb, is a flock of green wood hoopoes, some of the most colorful birds that we have out here. They hang around in family groups very similar to how the mongoose hang around in. It's called cooperative breeding, when an alpha and female, alpha male and female are the only ones to have babies, and adolescent, sub-adults, and juveniles all help each other bring up the youngest members of the flock. I read a very interesting article a couple of years back that said it's not actually nutritionally very feasible to do that, but in areas that can sustain enough volume of food, that it definitely helps in order to decrease, I suppose, there's a term for death rate, mortality of any particular flock. Just have a look at them using that long beak to probe into the wood. So the green wood hoopoo. And that is a very, very nice sighting of one. They usually are very active birds. And using that long beak to probe for insects. And there where the tree is damaged, you have lots of boring beetles and grubs that these birds would have access to, and they'd probe them out using their beak, supporting themselves on their tails. Sinak, you'd like to know when is their mating season and how many eggs do they have. Now, Sinak, you're going to have to excuse me while I consult my library to answer your question, because that type of information doesn't stick long in my mind, unfortunately. But luckily, I have Uncle Roberts to help me here, and I can answer your question in a little bit. Now, Sinak, you asked if they have any mating rituals, and I'm sure that they do, where males will entice a female. But once they become a bonded pair, there's not much mating rituals, but there is much strengthening of the bond between a mated pair. And very similar to parrots, they will do a lot of singing together. They make a hell of a noise, these birds, to be honest with you. They shout their territorial songs quite often with one another, bobbing their heads up and down. And you should be able to find out there on the web, green wood hoopoo dancing would be a very common video to find out there. It's something that you could film quite easily. All right, so let me see if I can answer your question Usually nests in natural tree cavities, but old woodpecker and barbet holes. Incubation period is 18 days. Chicks fed by members, parasitized by honey guides. No, doesn't say anything in my book at all about how many eggs and anything like that, Sinak, unfortunately. So I'm going to have to ask you to help me with that. I don't have another book. I do have a book in my library called Nests and Eggs, but not here with me. And so please, if you wouldn't mind giving me a hand, and I will update all of our other viewers with that information about them. All right, let's go forward a little bit and see what else we can find. It's actually been quite a nice road, this, to be honest with you. Nice diversity and habitat. As I was saying just now, I think Rex did a good job here. Now, Michelle, you've given us some feedback to use. You say, if you're not mistaken, they have about 4 eggs, which definitely sounds feasible, Michelle. So until Sinak gets back to us with some, or someone else comes back with some, let's say 4 eggs for now. Now, the incubation period. And Luke says Project Alpha has confirmed 3 to 4 eggs in spring. So there you go, 3 to 4 eggs in spring is what the green wood hoopoes have. So thank you very much, everybody out there, for helping us with that answer. And nests in tree cavities made by woodpeckers and barbets and parasitized by the greater honey guide, which means that the honey guide will come into the nest, kick out the green wood hoopoe's egg, lay its own egg there, and the green wood hoopoo would then feed and bring up the greater honey guide's baby, while the greater honey guide doesn't do any parenting whatsoever. There they're sitting on the branch there. Let's see if we can get a little bit closer without scaring them off. Have another look at these guys. There we go. That's a nice picture. They have got iridescent feathers, meaning that there's a thick layer of keratin that covers each filament on their feathers, and they have got melanin saturated feathers which then refract light through that keratin on a black background, which makes that flash very similar to the starlings that we're going to have a look at in a second as well. So what these birds are doing is building up a bit of a heat store. They're all sitting on trees facing the sun, and that is because as the sun sets here this afternoon, the temperature is going to dive, and these birds obviously need to retain as much heat as possible to make sure that they survive to the morning. They don't carry a lot of fat on them, and so they do battle staying warm. That you're having a look at there is the Burchell's starling, also one of my favorite birds. A very precocious bird, this. Also hunts insects, this time on the ground, unlike the green wood hoopoes who hunt them in tree cavities. These Burchell starlings compete for virtually the same food as what the dwarf mongoose do, and will run down any prey, from small mice all the way through to scorpions and even some snakes. They really do have a very wide, varied diet and use those long legs to run down prey. Now this bird's feathers are super saturated with melanin, and then have that keratin sheath, that thick keratin sheath, which gives it that iridescence. And isn't that just a splendid bird? Looks oiled. Shame, I think they are getting themselves worked up for tonight for sure. All right. Now, Philip, you'd like to know, are birds none the wiser when they are parasitized by a brood parasite? Philip, these brood parasites are so sneaky. Their eggs, in some instances, are exactly the same color and shape as the host bird, But in most instances, it's whole nesting birds. And what is absolutely amazing for me is that even though there'll be a massive size difference in most cases where the host bird is far bigger than what, the parasitic bird is far bigger than the host bird's babies, inside their mouth they have a brood spot. Now, in some instances, these brood spots are bioluminescent and are arranged in very specific patterns on the inside of a bird's mouth. And the parents are actually keyed to feed that brood spot on the inside of the mouth rather than feed the shape that is their baby, because it's dark inside a hole. And these parasites have managed to evolve babies with identical brood spots on the inside of their mouths, even though the babies are vastly out of proportion with one another. And the parents will continue to feed it. And it's because they're keyed to the brood spot. So my point being is that these bird parasites, or these brood parasites, have really evolved a massively complex system of subterfuge and camouflage to get around not looking after their own babies, and even invested heavily in, well, from a, I suppose a evolutionary point of view, in circumventing this parental need or parental responsibility. All right, James has managed to get himself mobile again, and I'm sure is dying to catch up with you.
Dying to catch up with you, yes, yes. And we are live again. Sorry about that. Something has happened at the back. Not even the Russian understands what has happened at the back, which means it could be catastrophic. Fergus could catch fire at any stage, but we seem to have a signal again, which is excellent. Let's have a look at the impalas, which are coming down to have a drink at the waterhole. Luke says it was nice knowing Fergus. I agree.
Right back at you, Luke.
It's been very pleasant. Let's hope it continues, but we all move on from these tragedies. There we have the glorious herd of impala, and as we drove back with our signal problems, we noticed two rams chasing females for no reason, other than the fact that their testosterone is still high, and they're of course wasting their time trying to herd females at this time of the year, because all of the ladies that are going to be pregnant are pregnant. Those that aren't will either not be pregnant this year at all, or may come into estrus in September for the secondary breeding season. I told you the light would change in about an hour, and so it has. We are going to go back towards Beefles Hook Waterhole to enjoy Tingana in this light. I believe that we're being stalked by the dam cam. Let's give it a wave, Fergus. There we are. Hello. Zoomy, whoever you are. Fine people that man the camera from all around the world. Now they're turning away, yes. They're feeling embarrassed that we've spotted them. And remarkably managing to sustain themselves on grass that, if you smell, just smells like straw and has the same consistency as straw. But if you get right to the bottom of the plants, you can find a few green shoots, and that's what the impala will be going for. And eventually, of course, they will resort to browsing, because they are able to do that. I predict also that although we've only found one buffalo on this reserve for the last age, I'll get to that comment that I've just had now. I suspect the buffalo are going to come back because there's a lot of good dry forage on this reserve, and buffalo can survive well on that, and I suspect that as the winter progresses we'll have more than just the one buffalo we have at the moment. Thank you, Mona. You say impala are beautiful, but not as beautiful as me. Well, that's very kind. I don't think they don't spend as much time grooming. No, I also think that you would not find too many people who would agree with that, Mona, but I am in full agreement. I think I'm far better looking than an impala.
Some eyebrows there, man.
It's my good look. You like it?
Look at that. We'll do that.
No, I can't run at that speed. Yes, the impala are now running away because of that. Sorry about that, everybody. What a lovely, peaceful winter afternoon scene. Always on Mondays I like to have a small reminisce. Well, Steve does medicinal Mondays. I like to reminisce about the time, my times living in Johannesburg as a guitar teacher, thinking about what I would have been doing on Monday afternoon. I think it was theory lessons on Monday afternoons. This particular memory is of... It's probably not quite funny to some, but some will find it quite funny. These two kids who kept arriving late for their theory lesson. You know, I'd say, why are you late? No, sir, I was in the tuck shop line. No, sir, my lace came undone and I forgot how to tie it. No, sir, my pen broke and I had to borrow another one. No, sir, my bag was hidden by my friends. And it just went on and on and on like this. And it was always the same two guys, very clearly, obviously lying through their teeth. And eventually they arrived for the 5th or 6th time late. I said, you know what, you're an imbecile. How can you lie? How can you arrive late to all this theory lesson is? You are late. You're an imbecile. What are you? He said, I'm an imbecile, sir. I said, that is correct. Now, make sure that you arrive on time. Well, it wasn't 2 days later that I was hauled in front of the headmaster because the parents of the detestable child in question had gone home and told his parents that I had dared to call their baby an imbecile. Which he very clearly was. It was, I mean, there was no lie in what I had said. And I was told in no uncertain terms that I was not to call children imbeciles because it hurt them for the future and gave them self-esteem issues. So I had nothing to do but say sorry very much, and I wouldn't call anyone an imbecile again because obviously I needed the job. So that's my Monday afternoon reminiscence. Luke, what was that about rock and roll? It wasn't a very rock and roll lifestyle, no. Yes, I led them down the path of rock and roll. Exactly, that's what I was doing. Exactly, when they become lead guitarists or a band called the Imbeciles, as Fergus has suggested, then my methods will be justified. This light is perfect for the Birchall starling. That one's run away into the shade. There's one in front of us though. Let's have a look at that one. How's that one? No, oh, perfect posing. There we go. Billy and the Imbeciles, that's what the band's going to be called. Let's just hope he's not their business manager, because if he is, it'll be a disaster. Philip, animals love guitar playing. It does depend on their individual tastes, though, of course. Some of them like hard stuff, some of them like a bit of hip-hop, and some of them like the blues. But this bird likes the blues, for example. The lilac-breasted roller is a fan of Pink Floyd. What else have we got? Generally find the vultures like hard, heavy music. Franklins tend to like a lot of classical music based on brass instruments, that sort of stuff. You know, we try and play them what they like. I don't really play my guitar for the animals. I'm just making a joke. There we are, the sound of music. They always like the sound of music and Snow White singing with all the animals. rock and roll lifestyle. Billy and the Imbeciles, that's what I think we'll call them. He'll probably become some multi-millionaire rock star. Tell his children about this nasty fellow he had as a theory teacher once, and how grateful he is that he ignored all the lessons he was given. Many of you going on about Pink Floyd. I'm very pleased about that. I'm not sure how many of you are teachers, but I'm sure even if most of you have not engaged in the unprofessional behaviour of calling your pupils imbeciles, I bet you've wanted to. I just gave in to temptation. My favourite was a guy who used to pitch up for his theory lesson without a pencil. Where is your pencil? I don't have it, sir. Yes, I can see that, but where is it and why don't you have it? Well, because I left it in my desk, sir. Why did you leave it there? I don't know, sir. Let's go across to the least imbecilic member of our staff.
Can you imagine James being your music teacher, or at least sending your children to James for music lessons? I think I'd do it just for the laugh of it, to be honest with you. But that being said, James does fill our camp with the most unbelievable music when he's playing. And sometimes I actually catch myself having to remind myself that it's a human being playing a musical instrument made up of movable, vibrating strings on wooden boxes of all different shapes and sizes. Something that has completely and totally missed me as a skill at all. I have no musical talent whatsoever. Yeah, so it definitely is quite nice. James definitely has a skill, and I'm much appreciative of all the music that he makes in camp. I think everybody is to a degree. All right, we're about to approach Treehouse Dam, and while I don't really expect anything there, you never really know with these types of things. It's always a bit of a surprise. There's some anticipation in getting up to a dam, and I don't really know what it is about. It's maybe, I don't know, same anticipation you have about walking up to a pub and hoping that someone that you know is inside there for a drink. But I'm looking forward to seeing what is there. So we're going to sneak up on this dam, if there is such a thing as sneaking in one of these vehicles. We are just taking it very easy. And the reason why I'm doing that is you don't want to alarm something at water. Water this time of the year is these vast open patches of mud and floodplain basically, and animals feel very exposed. And if you come barreling in there, you can quite often chase a skittish animal away from a pan. And so just approaching it easily is a nice way not to scare them away. Now, Crafty Stash, you want to know if there's a way that animals can get water if all of the water had to dry up. There is actually, to make you feel rest assured that in the Sabi Sand Game Reserve where we are right now, there's a lot of pans that are pumped. And not only that, but the Sand River and the Sabi River both very rarely dry up, very rarely stop flowing and never dry up. Not in the 20 years I've been here, at least. Even through one of the worst droughts that I've ever been through a couple of years ago, the Sand River stopped flowing, but there were vast pools of water. And so animals between the pumped pans and the permanent water here won't run out of water. Run out of food, absolutely. Run out of water, no. And that's a good thing, because animals can do with a lot longer with no food than what they can do without water. And so this particular area is very good for animals all through the year, but particularly in the dry season because of the amount of water that there is around here. So we actually see an increase in animal numbers in the dry season and a decrease in the wet season here. So we're actually heading into our high animal concentrations now, and animal numbers will only pick up. You're going to be watching for the next couple of months, and it'll build to a crescendo around October, early November, just before the big rains start. And you're in for a treat, at least, anyway. Okay, we got some warthog. Now, warthog are one of those animals that are skittish, and we're probably just going to get a quick glimpse of them before they leave. So get your screenshots ready. Now that is why we sneak up, in that you don't want to disturb them. Warthog in particular are skittish around pans, and these warthog are drinking very late. Usually warthog drink in the middle of the day, and it's interesting to see them drinking now. So this is unusual behavior, and I got a feeling it's because their hole is probably quite close by, and so they're drinking just before retiring for the evening. See warthog, probably mom with 2 babies, and they look to have been born in December. Beginning of December, or November is when the babies are born, but we start seeing them in December, and they're around about the size of those last year's Christmas babies. And they're going to start following mom away. Not spending too long close to water. Lion will set up camp around watering holes in the dry season and pick off prey like warthog around these watering holes. Now, during the dry season, they know animals have to drink, and they make absolutely full use of that. I'm very, very glad that we didn't disturb them. We didn't even disturb the Egyptian geese, which are those birds that are just to the left of the warthog. They're usually quite a ruckus when you disturb them. Sinak, you just asked if we can see warthogs at night. It's uncommon, Sinak, to see warthogs at night unless they've been chased out of their burrow. Usually when you see pigs at night, it is the bush pig, which looks almost exactly the same as the warthog, but is more nocturnal in its habits. However, I have seen warthog in cornfields, in maize fields, at night time, specifically on a full moon night, and where there is a distinct lack of large predators, so where there are no hyena, lion, and large concentrations of leopard. You will find warthog making the most of crops at night, obviously when the farmers are sleeping. But it is uncommon to see them hanging around at night. And now, when has it happened before that I've seen it? During the drought 2 or 3 years ago, I was seeing warthog at my house in Hoedspruit. I was seeing warthog in the middle of the night, right next to my house, where they wouldn't leave potential food sources. My wife would put out a little bit of grass for the animals starving to death in the place where we were living, and warthog would sleep next to the house, knowing that they'd get the first pickings at the food in the morning. So they will change habits depending on circumstances, but to answer your question, Sinak, it's unusual to see warthog at night. What they will do now is make their way through to a burrow, which is generally excavated out of an aardvark digging in a termite mound, and they will reverse themselves in there and hole up for the night, coming out when the sun is up tomorrow morning. Alright, why don't we go and see what my friend James is up to.
I've just taken a slightly different route back towards Beefleshoek Waterhole, thinking we might cross some tracks to actual animal of Thandi and Tlalamba. This is round about where Tlalamba was found this morning by Rexon. And I believe Tingana is still asleep. But we'll go back there and have a look. And I think we'll definitely try and have a look at him as darkness falls. And if there's no one else there, we'll put the thermal drone up. No, it's not us. Just listening to the radio. I think Rexon is travelling far and wide looking for the wild dogs. Kudu tracks, Nyala tracks, No gnarlers, no kudus though. I'm very pleased that we've transferred our luck to Steph. He now can't start Wendy. That's not surprising. You know, when things... Oh, I think it's just water, so they're just topping it up. Well, that's good. It's a relief. Just checking my temperature gauge. We're still okay. Now, here's where we must concentrate to see if Kalamba is around. Kalamba, will you come if I sing to you? Kalamba, will you come if we sing to you? Kalamba, will you come if we sing to you? Sing to you, sing to you. Luke says we're having audio problems. There's a sort of high-pitched noise coming through. It's me singing, Luke. I'm singing to Kalamba. Well, I'm hoping will come to us if we sing to her. It must be quite soothing. Soothing voice. She was just over here near the pile of bones that once were a buffalo, but are now a pile of bones of a buffalo. And it was a rotting buffalo of the time. Nobody ate it, it just rotted into the ground. It was disgusting to smell. Steph showed it to everybody on a TV show and people vomited because it was so disgusting. She was over here. I think her mum is still out hunting. Might see them at the dam. I do apologise for my singing there, everybody. Yeah, I'm glad some of you seem to be enjoying the new musical flavour of the show. That's good. I think you should ask Steph to sing the next time you see him. Yes, he's got a wonderful voice. He also, as you can tell from his general disposition, is very theatrical about everything that he does. If you want to see exactly how theatrical Stefan is, go and watch the video we made about... What was it? I think it was our birthday video, actually. It was our birthday video from this year. And everybody had to stand against the wall, pull a face or smile or do whatever it was. Steph's face, and I quote with my face, does this. And then he just shakes his head and walks off. As being in front of a camera for the sake of performance is not for him. For the sake of showing people biology and game drive and that sort of thing, absolutely. Oh, I see that the date is still in full progress. Scuba and his baby. Luke thinks that Steph is conning us all, and that actually he's a huge fan of theatrics, and probably in his room at night he puts on musicals and dances Fred Astaire numbers. There is our batelier friend. It would be very funny one day for the wind to blow Steph's door open and to find him dressed in a top hat and what are those braces and tap dancing. It is 2x2 meter square room with a double bed in it. Not a lot of space. It would be seriously funny though. There's our batelier. You can see its feet are just turning pink, which is what they will be, of course, when he gets big. He's not going to get much bigger than he is, but his colours will change, obviously. Marvellous. Now, there are a whole lot of vultures flew in a little bit earlier. I can't see them now, and I thought they were going to come down and eat the stomach that we showed you, but I don't think they have. I'm not sure where they've gone to. Anyway, the stomach is still there. That's my head, not the stomach. Everybody, this is the same juvenile batelier we saw a little bit earlier. We are in the same place. We're just back at Buffelshoek Waterhole. And what we'll do is now go down towards Tingana. We'll leave these two kids and their romance. Same two hippopotamus that we saw earlier, Scuba Steve and his girlfriend Scuba Sarah. Love, hope, faith, if we'll point over there, where the buffalo carcass was, where I was stopped and we started singing, that is where Tlalamba was, so as the crow flies, a couple of 100 metres. But she's been there for a while now, been there for a few days, so Tundi's chosen this as a sort of new spot to leave her. Alrighty, let's head down here. I hope the signal maintains. It should, if the Russian has achieved what he set out to earlier today. Apparently Wendy will be up and running again, which is good news. Hello, Scuba and Sarah. Yeah, we're watching you two. Yes. She's opening her mouth at us, saying, "Leave us alone. Leave Steve alone. While he's not the most flamboyant, I know him to have a sparkling personality. He's just got a very subtle sense of humour." Yes, it's very subtle. So subtle that it's indiscernible. Poor old Scuba. He's of course no more boring than any other hippo in reality. It's just that he's on his own. Yeah? Is that worth it? Bit of a dead tree silhu het. There we are. Beautiful. That is the same batelier we've now seen 3 times. That's gorgeous, Fergus. Well done.
Spotted.
Well, 3 times, yeah. I must confess to you all that I don't recall having, I don't recall the winter being quite so silent before. It really is it's almost eerie. Even the Franklins seem to have given up singing for June. Of course, last year I didn't spend any time in the winter here. I was in the Masai Mara and Italy, actually, for the first part. So maybe it's just that I am 2 years out of the winter here. That's so lovely. Alright, let's go and see what Tingana is doing. Well, while we get into position here, I believe that Steph, the tap dancer, has managed to start his car again.
Tap dancer. I'm just trying to picture myself tap dancing when I can hardly walk in a straight line without losing rhythm. Anyway, we're looking at some crested francolin, one of my favorite birds. In actual fact, they give out the my favorite bird call. And we've managed to hook up one of our toys at the moment, the FLIR infrared camera. And we don't often look at birds in infrared. And I was wanting to know, Luke, if it's possible to hook up the picture yet? All right, so there you have a look at just after the sun has started to set. You can still see everything that's harboring any heat is bright orange, and anything cooler is purple. So the cold is the purple, the hot spots are the bright orange, red, and then yellow are the hottest. And there you can see that shining tree trunk in the background there, holding an immense amount of heat. And you can see the francolin on the road. And isn't it just incredible how quickly the road loses its heat, whereas the grass retains its heat and trees retain their heat deep into the evening. And what is absolutely spectacular is the fact that even though the bird has feathers insulating it, it's actually giving off a lot of heat, that little francolin. That has been insane. Now the bird is virtually invisible to the camera, to the natural light camera, but we can still see the francolin clearly. Here you now back with the normal camera, and now the bird has actually disappeared. What we can do is show you one just off to the right hand side, Seb, still there against the termite mound. Wow, that is incredible, the amount of heat that is held here. Here's the little francolin on the termite mound, just looking for those last few morsels of grass seeds before tucking up for the evening. And Luke, are we on the FLIR's image, or are we still in natural light? Those noises that you're hearing there is the Egyptian geese that are at the pan. They've just been disturbed, and you can see how noisy they make. All right, let's see if we can. Now he's going to go over the top and then into that. Let's go onto the road here, Seb. We've got one in the grass, going onto the grass here. And let me just show you quickly. Now that grass cover is about as thick as what you can get it. And although we cannot see that bird anymore, you can still see its head bobbing around in that colored image that you're having a look at there now. Isn't that just incredible? But what is insane is the amount of heat that those trees are still carrying. That is really just absolutely amazing. These gadgets are super cool. Now, as we will go into tonight, basically as the sun sets and we lose natural light and we lose our ability to use the cameras without artificial light, this is where we will start to see the benefits of this FLIR image, which uses temperature rather than light to generate an image. And they're just super cool. There you now are back with the normal camera, and you can see the vast difference in what you're looking at. Really cool. All right, we're going to carry on and look for some more interesting things to show you with these two cameras, and hopefully a pretty cool sunset as well. We're off to James in Tingana.
Well, we've arrived back, and you can see that he has had a very, very active afternoon indeed. He seems to have rolled over once. So he's in absolutely no rush to get back up his tree and started doing some feeding, which is a pity, because we'd like to see him do that. We'll sit with him for a while. I don't think we're going to stay with him for the rest of the drive, unless he does something fairly spectacular. I'm not sure that's necessary. There he is, breathing away, relaxed as you like. Ooh, I think that's actually quite an easy question to answer, Red Rosa. My most favourite leopard sighting ever was probably my second experience with Shongile on foot. And we had her, and she just walked with us between the Pan and the south of the reserve all the way to Treehouse Dam, and she just allowed us to follow her. And it was very, very special, because she just didn't pay any attention to us at all. She ate a tortoise on the way, and then she eventually got a little bit cheesed off and disappeared into the bushes, which was just great. Anyway, that's probably my favourite one I ever had. I'm just trying to think of any others. I mean, there have been so many over the years. I tell you, one of my very first favourite ones was also with a young male leopard, and what he did was it was the first time I'd actually seen a leopard on foot on my own, and I smelt a kill, which was obviously disgusting, and I went in and sort of investigated. I was just on a walk on my own one afternoon, and this leopard exploded out of a bush in front of me and then stood. And he was a young leopard. He was probably about a year old. And we stared at each other for about, well, how long would it have been? Probably for about 2 minutes. It may have been much shorter than that. And, well, it was just a great privilege to spend that time with him on foot. And ever since that time, I've really enjoyed being with especially young leopards on foot. So I would say those have been my favourite leopard sightings. Well, Ravinder, you say your favourite leopard sighting was the first one that you had with me and Karula on your very first safari. You know, it took me, Ravinder, on about, I think it took me 2 or 3 months before I actually met Karula, which was a bit sad. But once I had, I enjoyed her very much. I made the mistake, Ravinder, of calling her pug-faced the first time I saw her. Well, I'm afraid the internet exploded. I never dared call her anything like that again. Wonderful tail there of Tingana. Gorgeous. Like I say, it becomes a little difficult to talk about a flat cat like this. So if anybody would like to make comments on Tingana or ask questions about Tingana or anything else, you know how to do it, feel free to go ahead. I think it's worth sitting here just for a few more minutes to see what he does. Simply because, you know, I mean, we don't always have leopards. We often have leopards. Okay, we're going to get Steph's favourite leopard sighting, and we'll do one more segment here, and if he still hasn't done anything, we'll move away and see what we can find with the thermal drone.
I didn't quite catch the question there, Luke. Sorry, man. We were busy trying to get into a nice place to watch the last few minutes of the sunset. Oh, which is my favourite leopard sighting? Of standout has to be the 2nd of March last year, which is the first time that I ever walked into Karula's two cubs. And I think it was Shongile, may have been Osana, but I think it was Shongile, lying up in a huge jackleberry tree. And we ended up spending 45 minutes with her in the top of this tree where she was super relaxed with us on foot. And it was a landmark experience for me because to have such trust from these animals in this area shows that we're doing something right here and shows what's possible in terms of human-wildlife interactions. But the sad thing was, and what gave it such relevance to me, was the fact that leopard are in sharp decline all over the world, being blamed for any number of, interactions with humans. And I get it. I get the fact that stock theft is a problem and people rely on these animals for sustenance for their families. But it is possible to live with these animals in harmony. And that sighting that I had on foot that day was just absolutely relevant to me and spoke to that. Wow, it is a very tangled view that you've got through the bush of the sunset, but it is allowing you at least to be able to gaze directly at the sun. As predicted, it's going to be a beautifully red orb that sets into the west, and the reason for that is the light is diffused from all the dust that's in the atmosphere ahead of this cold front that's apparently marching its way across the country toward us. Now, usually what precedes these cold fronts is a very warm wind called a berg wind. What happens is the cold front shifts air off the top of the inland plateau down off the escarpment, and for every 100 meters the air descends, it increases in temperature by 1 degree Celsius. And it's called the dry adiabatic lapse rate, and it usually gusts these lovely puffs of warm air onto us for a couple of hours before this cold front smashes into us and usually undercuts this warm air and lifts it. And if it is going to be reaching us tonight or tomorrow morning, I predict that we're going to have a pretty overcast morning if this cold front gets here, and therefore sunrise tomorrow morning might be overcast. Right now the wind is coming out of the northeast and is relatively chilly. Well, I mean, I say that. All of us here are creatures of the desert and don't do well with cold at all. All right, someone that doesn't seem to mind the cold at all is Tingana, and James is still with him.
I'm not sure that he doesn't mind the cold. He's certainly not doing anything. So enjoy him while he lasts now. We're going to be leaving him fairly soon. And go off and see what else we can find. And what we'll probably do is park on Beevelshoek Dam wall and then see if we fly over the top of the block, high up obviously, see if we don't spot anything to do with Tlalamba or Tandi. Patricia, we don't know anything about Tingana's lineage. We know that he vaguely where he came from, but we do not know who his parents were. We know vaguely his age, but as far as I'm aware, nobody knows who his parents were, which is good, because of course one doesn't want leopards you know too well in these areas, simply because he's obviously now added to the genetic diversity of this area, which is fantastic. We think that he is pushing 13 this year, and well, that's pretty old for a leopard, and he's in very good nick, as I keep saying. I think he's in extremely good nick for a leopard his age. He certainly gets enough rest. As Seb said to me yesterday, after we found him, and then he lay down. We didn't find him. We bumped into some other people who had found him. He said to me as he lay down, he said, Tingana is going to settle in for his 6-hour nap now, just as we found him. And he definitely does do 6-hour naps fairly regularly. Did you like my Sebastian accent there, folk?
I thought it was Tingana.
No. No, Tingana doesn't have a French accent. Yes, I'm not sure if Seb, I think Seb probably does like a 6-hour nap every now and again. He is born of Gallic stock after all. I doubt he gets many 6-hour naps with the daughter aged 4 or 5. them days is over, as they say. They do definitely, Minamu, they absolutely live longer in captivity. Leopards apparently will live up to 20 years in captivity. Life's just easier, you know, and they get fed regularly, they don't have to fight. You must also understand, I mean, if you look at something like a football player or a rugby player, here comes wild dogs, wild dogs, wild dogs, wild dogs at the dam, wild dogs at the dam. You got them? You got them? No, let me move. I don't think they're going to come up here. I'll get back to you, Minamu. I just saw this little trotting figure. Tingana? Yeah, they're coming here. They're coming along. We'll have an interaction. I'm going to wait here. There. You see there, Ferg? Just through there, coming up here. Let's just see if they come up. This is wonderful, and we're all on our own. No one here with us. Yeah, he's still coming up. He can smell the meat, you see. Here he comes. He's coming. 2 of them now. Minamu, I'll get back to you. Tingana's ears just flicked up. We are going to do one of our unscheduled broadcasts. Here they come. They're coming up the drainage line. It's dead silence. No bird is calling. There's not a sound. Now they're turning round. There are just 2 of them there. They can smell something. They know they killed this impala here today. Now moving back down towards the waterhole. There, he's up. He can see them. He spotted them. Look. They've seen him too. Now he's going to go straight up the tree. Here they come. They've come. Here they come. Just 2 of them. I'm going to move. Hello everybody who's just joined us. We're sitting here in the western fringes of the Great Kruger National Park. We've got a leopard in a tree here, and we've got a pack of wild dogs just below the tree. We're just going to see if we can get a better view. Wild dogs and leopards have a foul relationship, much like domestic cats and dogs. Oh, let me sneak a little bit forward. There we go. They're a little bit nervous, the dogs are. Obviously, because it's a big male leopard. You might just be able to hear them going. Now, what happened here this morning is that these dogs killed an impala at a waterhole. The leopard came by after they'd left the remains. He took the remains, he's put them in this tree, and now they've come across him. And he's just leapt up the tree now to get away from them. He just heard them in time. And he'll be completely comfortable sitting where he is now. There the dogs are. Here they come. Look at this. This is magic. Coming up the side now. Just the 2 of them, I think. They'll just be warning him, saying, you stay in the tree. He'll be completely comfortable because they cannot climb. But they have a really bad relationship with wild dogs, and they'll be denning at this time of the year, you see. The dogs will, and a male leopard that comes across a wild dog den will tear their puppies to pieces. All of the big predators here have bad relationships with each other. They don't tolerate each other. We think it's because of competition. Yeah, Nick, this is beyond awesome. This really is very special to see. I mean, it's a common interaction that happens when these 2 species come across each other. But to be live with it here is very special indeed. Please keep talking to us, everybody, if you'd like to. I didn't even introduce myself. My name is James. You don't need to know that. But if you're interested, that's what's going on. Just the two dogs. And they are very upset. They are very, very upset to find this big cat here. Now, I don't believe that these two dogs would actually be able to take on a big male leopard like this. I think he'd give them a run. But of course, he's not a risk taker. He's never going to take a risk at having a fight if he can avoid it. 3 or 4 dogs, however, would be a big challenge for a male leopard. Do you know, you say they sound like rutting impala. They do sound like rutting impala. That growl they're making is very like that. Look at him jumping up and down. They won't let it go. Sorry, Lisa, I missed your question. Can we have it again? Lisa, I don't know if there is a rest of the pack. I don't know who these dogs are. So it's entirely possible that this is the pack. It's possible that the rest of them are actually at the water. And perhaps they may have chased something into the water. We're going to go and have a look shortly. I'm just going to let them go away. We know where the leopard's going to be. We don't know where the dogs are going to go. So I'm going to suggest that we head off towards those dogs, towards the water holes, and see if we can't answer Lisa's question ourselves. How wonderful was that? It's always nice when there's no actual conflict, no actual fighting. That is one of our favourite leopards. It's Tingana. He's a 13-year-old male. Yeah, they're at the water there. I can just see the white tail. I don't know if there are any others. We'll have a look-see. Now what they're doing, they're investigating the stomach of the dead impala that they killed here. Maybe it wasn't them, maybe it was them that killed, and the hippo are coming out, not happy to see the wild dogs having a drink. Just amazing. Is that right, Ferg? We'll stop here. Sorry about the little bit of signal break-up there, everybody. We are in a tricky area. This is just fantastic. Now, why on earth a hippopotamus should be vaguely worried about a wild dog is beyond me. But they all react to wild dogs like this. Even elephants react to wild dogs like this. They get deeply upset. And now everything has settled down. I wonder if they haven't already killed a scrub hare or two and have just come here for a drink. It's also possible, of course, that the pack was split while they were hunting. That does happen. They all bombshell around, or shotgun approach to hunting can often split the pack up. I actually also think that those hippo would be closer to the wild dogs chasing them away if it wasn't for the fact that we are here. Holly, yes, that is the entire intention behind what we do here, that you feel like you are right here without actually having to be here. The hippo's coming out. I'm glad you feel like you're right here. That's wonderful. Poor old Tingana, in his dotage, having to leap up a tree like that to get away from the wild dogs. Just giving a bit of a warning yawn to the dogs. That's a cow, hippo cow. There's a big bull behind her. And so the fact that he's not interested in this conflict is quite interesting. It's only her. Now that other dog is now starting to look up towards where the leopard is. In fact, we can see the tree where the leopard is from here. The leopard is not coming down. Amelia, difficult to tell which one is the alpha here. If this is a pack of two, it's most likely a dispersal pack, so they're probably siblings, you know, and they'll join another pack. I don't recognize these dogs, but you know, we see them so infrequently that it's very difficult to remember what they all look like. Oh, I do need to call the sighting in, of course. Except, of course, we don't view dogs in the night time. Stations, there are 2 wild dogs at Buffelshoek Dam. This is just the most magical thing. Now everything's calmed down. Indra, I'm guessing that these dogs would probably be into their, you know, about 18 months old. I don't think they're much older than that. They've got ears that are, well, except that one of the water's got mangled ears, slightly mangled ears. So he's probably a bit older. So the chances of him being part of a dispersal group, very small. Hippo getting very upset now, yawning. You can have a look now. I think they're both females, you know. I don't think, yeah, they are. They're both females. They're older than 18 months as well. They're adults, they're fully adult. So why that should just be the 2 of them, I'm not sure. Unless they're part of a much smaller pack that has denned somewhere and they've been kind of sent out as a feeding party. Nick, they're diurnal hunters, and so the reason we don't view them at night is that, you know, they would normally try and avoid being seen at night, and so to view them at night we'd have to shine some kind of a light on them or disturb them. We could probably do it with our infrared lights, and we have got thermal technology on the vehicle as well, but what our attention to the dogs obviously will be followed very closely by other game drivers in the area. I think they're going to go north. Let's just keep a quick look. And so basically we will try not to view any animals active at night with any kind of lighting. Alrighty, that was just fantastic. Everybody who's just joined us, you can keep watching us, of course. If you go to Safari Live on YouTube or just Google Safari Live, you'll find a platform where we do our 2 daily scheduled shows. One of them from 5:30 in the morning to 8:30, and one of them, of course, from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock p.m. That's Central African time. And for those of you who have just joined us, thank you very much for your questions and comments. We'll see you again very soon. Let's just see where they go. Like I say, I mean, we wouldn't really call them in at this time of the day because the sun's gone down. Just pop up here. This is where they came today. How fantastic was that, everybody? Just very, very special indeed. Just a little bit faster up here. can't see their tracks. I wonder if they haven't gone back in to have a fight with Tingana. Anyway, we'll try and find them. Let's go and find out what Steph is looking at with his thermal camera.
What an awesome surprise. Just out of nowhere, 2 wild dogs just come into the sighting and give you guys all of that action. That's pretty epic. We've been taking some pictures of Impala and of the sunset, and now we're just trying to negotiate our way through these corrugations on this road without shaking my teeth out and creating some catastrophe with the camera. So we're just taking it very easy, and I'm hoping that something pops out onto this road. It's a very good road for animal traffic. This is the Triple M boundary, and from the Sand River Basin basically to into some deep drainage lines on this side where winter forage is quite good. You get a lot of animals crossing up the hill and up the slopes, and so I'm hoping that we find something walking out here as the evening progresses. For sure we're going to go and check up onto that wildebeest herd that we saw a little bit earlier and see if something's come shopping at the open area. Now, James, you'd like to know what animal I'd like to see in thermal. That's a good question, James. I'd probably like to see a pangolin in thermal to see how those scales on their body insulate them, to be honest. Also, I'd like to see how much heat an aardvark's naked skin, well, virtually naked. They've got hair on their skin, of course, but they're very susceptible to temperature. So I want to see how brightly does an aardvark shine in the evening. And then let's take something that's epically camouflaged. What's epically camouflaged, Seb, that you can think of that's nocturnal?
A chameleon would be interesting.
A chameleon would be interesting to see, Seb says. Something else that would be epically camouflaged would be one of the nocturnal snakes, puff adder, owls, yeah. So something that's from a visual light point of view virtually invisible, but from an infrared point of view would stand out quite nicely. So I think those contrasts would be quite nice. Let's go and see what these wildebeest look like in infrared. We are about 10 seconds away from seeing them. They haven't gone anywhere, and it doesn't look like anything has come shopping at them just yet. They're in the prime spot on top of this open area here. This is the southern end of Impala Plains, and an absolute pristine place for them to be because it's open and there's lots of place to run to if a predator had to come around. Michael, you'd like to know if there's any tree species that seems to retain more heat. That I haven't been able to tell just yet, Michael, but what I have been able to tell is there's a tree near Quarantine that is absolutely hotter than any other tree that we've seen. It shines out super bright, and I'm definitely going to go past this tree when I can finally identify where it is and just have a look at it, see what it is. So I definitely know the hottest tree so far that we found, but not the coldest. All right, we're at these wildebeest. Let's have a look at them. So we're going to bring you in close with the visual light camera, and then when Luke says we're ready, we're going to go out onto the thermal, although I can see that we've got no signal from the thermal camera at the moment. So we're just going to fix that in a moment. So it's going to take a bit of a second. Seb says that the camera is just going to reboot itself. So it's going to take a bit of time, but don't worry, we'll get it up and running. These toys are not meant for these applications, I tell you, and sometimes I think the shaking in the dust and just what we put these things through has their effect. Nevertheless, it'll come on now. And then we're looking at a young wildebeest. I wonder if this is one of the ones that we saw born 2 years ago, the teeth of the drought. And pretty much all of them survived that year and increased this herd size dramatically. It's full dusk now. twilight here in Africa, even though it is winter, is so unlike that in the higher latitudes in the northern hemisphere. We get a pretty sudden, I would say, twilight. I mean, it doesn't last very long. From sunset to full black is probably 30 minutes or so. I'm not too sure where you live how that differs. In some instances, I'm aware that it's much longer than that, and twilight can last for hours. In other instances, pretty much as soon as the sun goes down, it gets black. But here it's about 30 minutes or so. And you can see everything's got this sort of grayish pink hue to it. And what I'm looking at is very close to what you're looking at. I'm just contrasting my own sight to that I'm seeing on the little screen that I have in front of me. And you're definitely seeing very close to what I'm seeing. It's a pinkish grey hue as we stare out across this open area and into the east. So Jessica, you say it's so nice to have these wildebeest back and you've missed them a little bit. I must say it is quite nice to see them. Wildebeest and zebra are like giraffe here. You know, they come and go. Some days you see plenty of them and they're around all the time, and then all of a sudden they've disappeared and for weeks you don't see them. And when you finally do realize they're gone, it becomes a real point. And then all of a sudden they're back again and you can reminisce about the last time you've seen them. And it is quite nice. What is interesting is that we will have this FLIR's image with you in a second, and what I've noticed is that in 10 minutes the temperature range has gone from 27, 26 degrees to 18 and 16 degrees respectively, and that just gives you an idea of how quickly the temperature drops here as soon as the sun goes down. We've lost 10 degrees Celsius in 10 minutes, and it'll only continue to do so. Into the night. We'll drop down at least 20 degrees Celsius before tomorrow morning.
We can go live with that. I can't remove the overlays though. So
all right, so we are ready with the FLIR, Luke, if you are. The only thing is we can't remove the overlays just yet. All right, there you go. So there you have a FLIR image of what we're having a look at, the wildebeest, and you can just see how the bush is still retaining a fair amount of heat, whereas the open patches of grass are not. And then with the wildebeest, the hottest, and there you can see as Seb goes in a little bit tighter, you can absolutely see those wildebeest stand out in stark relief. Now what is interesting is their horns, and look how hot their horns are. Even the youngsters have got horns, and that's because there's a bony core in the middle of the horns, and that's fed with blood. And for those of you who are wondering what the difference is between a horn and an antler, there you have it. The fact that that horn is warm is why we don't have horns in the northern hemisphere in the very cold places. And it's because there's blood flow and therefore temperature loss in those vast expanses of everything from protection through to display. And if it were to get super cold here, having an extremity like that means that you're losing body heat. And so antlers were evolved. Now, Tracy, you say, wow, this is amazing. It is amazing, eh, Tracy? And just have a look at the detail that you can see with this camera. It just is incredible. Now, just out of interest's sake, we've lost another 1 degree since I started to speak to you. Gives you an idea of how quickly we're losing temperature here. You'll notice that we're zooming in and zooming out, and the camera loses focus, and every now and again we're trying a different setting, and that's just us getting used to this camera right now. Interestingly, the blues and purples are at 15 degrees, and the yellow is at 32 to 33 degrees centigrade. Give you an idea of the thermal range that we're busy having a look at there. Around the ears and the eyes, the hottest place, on the thighs and on the chest and the nose. A young wildebeest looking at something in the grass off to the left-hand side. Could be a bird, could be anything. They will now feed pretty much into the night. It's going to be a dark first little bit of the night. We've just had a full moon, and it is going to be pitch black here for a while before the moon comes up, and then the moon will be bright enough to actually throw some shadows into the last half of this evening. Just have a look at that. All right, why don't we go and have a look at what we're looking at in terms of normal light or visual light. You can see how dark it's actually become. You can see that wildebeest. We're just having a look at go and lie down on the left-hand side, and that will start the evening's activities for these wildebeest. They're not going to move around much in the pitch blackness. In fact, I expect them to lie all together, each of the adults facing in a different direction, that they can bring their senses to bear in that direction. So hearing and what little sight they will have and smell. And with the youngsters inside the circle, and they might start to feed again as soon as the moon rises and is bright enough for them to see around. Otherwise, they will stay in that sort of defensive circle for as long as what they can. And then get moving again tomorrow morning. Now, it's not uncommon for lions who have a much better eyesight than what the wildebeest do to chase these wildebeest off of an open area. They tend to run in these circles, at least what I've seen. They'll try not to be chased out of this open area. So they'll run in a broad circle, which then obviously plays in the lion's favor. Their hunting strategies to encircle their prey before they launch the attack. And you might find one or two of these wildebeest get caught because of that. And just another one of those contributing factors to why herd size in the Kruger National Park at these latitudes is not as big as the herd sizes in East Africa with a very broad open nights. Now, we're going back into thermal again because there's a nice collection of wildebeest there, and the color range is actually beautiful at the moment. For those of you just joining us, the darker colors, the blues and the purples are colder than the hotter colors, with the hottest colors being on the animals. Now, the temperature range is about 15 degrees from purple at 16 degrees to the bright yellow at currently now the average is 23 degrees with the wildebeest being at around about 32 to 33 degrees centigrade. Wow, that is super cool. Christine, you've asked an interesting question. Would a pregnant female show more heat on her belly because of the thermal? Christine, I mean, I'm going to debate this with you because I don't actually know the answer to this question, but I would imagine that with a more pronounced belly, that the hairs on the belly stick out more and would allow more access at this angle to the skin on the belly, and so we'd actually be able to see that on the thermal camera. So I'm going to say yes. From a certain angle, we'll be able to see a hotter image only because the hairs are not perpendicular to the view that we have at this particular angle. But that's an interesting question. I would imagine that there's more blood flow into the mammaries as well, and so you might find that it is slightly hotter. But I don't know that a mammal changes its core body temperature when they're pregnant. So in other words, would it be more orange because it's, let's say for instance, it was a human we were looking at because we are at 38 degrees or 38.5 degrees. I don't think, I didn't notice that with my wife when my son was being, I was being cooked up. But was being incubated. I don't quite know what the word. So no, so there we go, Christine. I think that would be my answer. I say yes. I think there's a good chance that they shine up better because the hair is just slightly more parallel to our view, and so we'd be able to see the skin more. And so she'd look more orange, but I don't think that her body temperature changes. And so I hope that answered the question for you. Now we are of course looking at these animals with no artificial light whatsoever. So that is why they are completely relaxed with us, and that we are able to spend a little bit longer with them than we normally would have if we had to take out a spotlight. And in fact, what we're going to be doing is moving over to James, who's got the drone up in the sky for you.
Is that not a magnificent... I don't know if you're looking at me. Are you looking at me or at the drone? Which picture are we looking at? I don't know. Okay, well, we've got the drone in the sky, as you can see there. And we're going to go basically a little bit along, looking for hot spots. Turn left from there if you can, Ferg, and head east. Quite a long way left. We basically want to go 90 degrees from there. And I am amazed at how the trees, although they are warm now, they seem to remain warm for the night. And I would have expected them to get much cooler by the time morning comes, but you'll see when we go out at 05:30 tomorrow morning, they will be pretty much the same temperature they are now. We need to try and come back in a sort of easterly direction so that we can see if Tandy is around. So, if you are experiencing this for the first time, and you're looking for a white spot, any kind of white spot, yes, Sam, it is amazing, any kind of white spot is going to indicate the presence of a mammal or possibly a bird, but the feathers tend to insulate them much better than the mammal's fur does. It's very interesting to note that, actually. If you look at an Egyptian goose, for example, the only bit of white you can see is on the exposed skin face. Skin face? Face skin. Now we know that Tundi and Tlalamba... Ooh, there, stop there, Ferg. Go back a little bit. And if you can point the camera straight down... There. What is that under that tree? It's moving. Let's go a little bit further along. There we are. It's interesting. No, I don't think we're going to get a better view of that. Let's just keep going. Yes, Miss Muffin Girl, we are absolutely playing with our toys, and basically what this is practice. The idea behind this is that it works in tandem with the other vehicle, which is called the chase vehicle, for want of a better term. I think it's quite a good term. And we are the kind of search vehicle. And so tomorrow morning at 5:30 when we go live, we'll go live in the air with this drone. Steph, who'll be on the other car, will be close by to where we're flying from. And he will make sure that... What's that? What? That's definitely an animal. Basically, if we see something like this and we can't identify it, we'll vector Steph in. And he'll then use his thermal to find out what it is. And the infrared, of course. Not sure what that is. Maybe do a little sort of circle around it if you can, Ferg. This is Fergus's first attempt at the thermal drone, is it not, Fergus? It is, yes. He's not even talking, he's concentrating so hard. There's a little thing also, just in front of that tree. Now, if I was a betting man, which I'm not, I think leave that big thing. I'm not sure it's moving. Ferg, if you go off to the right, into the top right quadrant there, I think you may have found Tlalamba. How high up are you? 43 meters. Yeah, maybe it's a bit small for her. It just moved with a slightly leopard-like motion, that thing. See it moving there? Bottom left now. It's going out of screen. Just moved with a sort of cat-like motion. I don't think we won't do any unscheduled broadcasts at this stage because I don't think Steph's anywhere near us. Is Steph anywhere near? We're at Buffelshoek Dam, by the way. Yeah, I don't think we'll set up anything unscheduled unless Steph is very close by. Also, if that is a leopard cub, we're not going to try and find it. Okay, yeah, Steph's miles away. So we'll just keep looking. I think that could be Tlalamba. Let's just keep going over the top of... Yeah, that's where they were looking for her earlier. Now, we're very high up there, so we're not going to give her any uphill. Let's come over the waterhole here, Ferg, if you like. And let's have a look at the hippo. And what I was amazed at when we looked at the hippo with the sort of terrestrial thermal camera, if you like, a little bit earlier, what we found was that the blubber on their bodies insulates them so perfectly that they don't actually give off much heat but for through their eyes and through their ears. Here's the surface of the water now. And the hippos to the... probably just in front of you there, Ferg. There they are. There's us. You can see Fergus is a mammal. That's nice to know. If he was a vampire or a zombie, we wouldn't be able to see him at all. And the hippo's just underneath the crosshairs there. You see that? So they're blue. They're actually cooler than the water's surface. That's fascinating. Yeah, I'll just go a little bit further forward and then maybe get over the top of them. Joy, Ellies are quite fun with us. They're quite easy to pick too because they're obviously so much bigger than anything else, and they definitely give off a lot more heat than these hippopotami are. That's a fascinating thing to see. Amazing. Look at that. Water is hotter than hippos. Alrighty, that was our first drone thermal Fergus's first thermal drone flight. We will hand you over to Steph now, and we will probably land and then move on with the spotlight.
We've got something very interesting to show you here. It is a question that I've been burning to ask myself from when we started playing with this fleur. So right here we have a beetle that you can see as a black dot right there. And that beetle is on a piece of wood. And I'm going to show you why that beetle is there and how fantastic Mother Nature is in a second. Luke, would it be okay to go to the fleur image? You might have to come down a little bit. Right. We're just going to do a quick reboot of this camera so we can show you. But let me explain to you while we're waiting for the reboot what's actually happening over here. So we'll just wait for Seb to reboot. So basically, this beetle is on this particular tree trunk because that's the warmest part of the bush right now. Out of the wind, on the warmest part of the tree, and he is as spread-eagled as he can to basically collect as much temperature and heat as they can. Being black, they absorb a lot of heat, they don't radiate out, and then insects being as far evolved as what they are, have got an incredibly efficient thermoregulation I don't even know what to say, system, let's call it a system, which will lose very little heat, if at all possible. And this particular beetle is almost at the bottom of the cold range, whereas the tree is shining bright orange, and just explains why we are seeing this beetle here, why it's not hidden, why it's not undercover, why is it on this open patch of this tree. And all these questions would have been absolutely an enigma and impossible to answer without this fantastic camera. So it's just booting up. It's going to take another couple of seconds or so, and then we should have an image which will prove my hypothesis that this beetle is on this tree because it is the warmest part in the bush. at the moment, out of the wind and spread-eagled in the open, exposed, because it's making use of the massive amount of heat that the tree retains. Now, whether or not the tree retains the temperature from radiation from the sun, or whether or not it has something to do with warm water that comes up into the tree's roots, I am unaware of at the moment. I don't know how warm, fluid is that comes from the leaves carrying all the sugars and what photosynthesis produces down into the tree trunk, and how warm the groundwater is that comes up from just below the surface up into the tree. I doubt it's from just below the surface, because I know that groundwater comes out of the ground into our houses at about 12 to 16 degrees centigrade, and that is the bottom end of our scale. And so it's either from the sun, or it is from photosynthesis and the tree's just general massive canopy that is exposed to the sun. Yeah, Luke says that there's a whole lot of you busy chatting about the fact that this beetle is the size of a cat. It is a fairly big beetle in actual fact. I think if I were to give a judge on how it is, if you had to open up your palm, it would easily fill your palm. That is how big this beetle is. Now, members of this particular beetle species have evolved some really fascinating ways of collecting moisture in the Namib Desert. They make use of a mist that rolls in off the ocean by turning their bottoms towards the mist and elevating their rear ends, and the water condenses on their bodies and then runs in grooves along their body into their mouths, where they then suck it up. And it's the only source of moisture that the desert gets, the Namib Desert gets, is these mists. And these beetles have evolved this fantastic thing. And so, unsurprising to me that this particular beetle has made use of the hottest part on the tree. Of course, because I want to show you it, it's taking forever for this camera to boot up. There we go, we got it. Now, Sinak, you've asked if the beetle feeds on tree bark. No, it doesn't. It doesn't feed on the tree bark at all. I believe personally that it's just here for the heat, which we're going to try and show you in a second. We haven't got too much battery left on the unit, and so we're going to try and get you one quick picture. So we have got the picture up. When you are ready, you can go for it. It's an evening full of joys. Alright, so we don't have a signal from the backpack, so we can't give you the signal from the thermal, but I'll tell you what, we are going to be able to show you a beetle on the camera at some point, so don't despair. We'll definitely show you some more, and with me on camera for the next couple of nights, it is a given that I'm going to be stopping for some insects and looking for more of this particular event. It'll also help me to absolutely confirm whether this is just a once-off or whether we actually have a workable hypothesis, if I can recreate the sighting for you. So hold me to it over the next couple of nights, and we'll see if we can find you something when we've got a little bit more battery and signal and everything else that we're playing with with this thing. All right, so since that was a completely unfulfilled sighting, I have to apologize for that. While I wallow in my pity here, you're off to James.
Much as Steph is not somebody I'd describe as particularly technologically savvy, he's mechanically savvy, technologically perhaps not so much, I really doubt that it was his fault. These things are quite finicky, and obviously they're not really designed for the thrashing around that they have to engage in on these vehicles. And one day when SafariLive is a multinational conglomerate, people will come to us and tell us that they want to design things for us. We will tell them, but you must make them very robust, and then do, and all will be well. But until that time, You just have to kind of make do. We'll just keep popping along. We don't have long left in this drive, so we'll...
All right, you're back with us all of a sudden. You didn't leave me wallowing for too long, which is a good thing. I don't like feeling sorry for myself for long at all. James is obviously driving around in a place where signal is a little bit of a difficult thing, and he lost you for a bit. And of course, that is a common thing out here with us as we drive through different patches of bush and whatever else interferes with all these things, and he'll find himself some new signal in a bit. Now, this time of the year, finding stuff through the thinning bush actually becomes a little bit easier, but it's actually not that cold. I'm almost tempted to say that we are experiencing some bergwind conditions right now. I just want to ask, I mean, Seb, last night, was it chillier than this?
Warmer. Yeah. Definitely warmer than the previous night.
So Seb says absolutely warmer than previous nights, and that then confirms my suspicion that we are experiencing bergwind conditions, which is a worry because bergwinds always precede cold fronts, and I must be honest with you, I hate being cold. It's definitely not one of my most favorite things, and so tomorrow is stacking up to be either wet and cold or cold and not my favorite thing, to be honest. But luckily they tend to pass on relatively quick. Within a couple of days it's going to be warm again, and a couple of weeks of this, only 3 or 4 weeks, and then spring will be on us. And very similar to the killing heat of summer, we only have for 3 or 4 weeks at a time, or the crushing heat of summer. It disappears, and for the rest of the year it's actually incredibly nice, temperate, mild temperatures, and a real pleasure to be around. No tornadoes or hurricanes. Sorry, Luke, what was that? I just missed that.
16 seconds.
Oh, 16 seconds. All right. So I'm going to say thank you from, oh no, 60, excuse me. Sorry. I've got these massive ear holes, and so my earpiece falls out, and I can't tape it in there with enough tape, to be honest. I miss half of what Luke is saying. All right. But it is coming to the end of tonight's Sunset Safari, and from myself and James, at least, we've definitely had some fun with you out tonight. I'm very happy to be out on the vehicle again. It's really nice. So from myself and James and the whole crew, say good night wherever you are, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. Absolutely, probably looking like polar bears.